All right, everybody. It says Monday on top of the screen. We apologize. We're here on a Tuesday night, and we're going to talk about apologies in just a moment. On the Monday Smash, a special evening edition, a special portal edition here on Warchant TV. He is Irish Novel, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang. Tonight's program is brought to you by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. And really, in these weird times, if we're going to move off a day here or there, that's the name of the game. The news is weird. The news cycle has been weird, but the true apology came in the form from one Florida State safety to the Seminole fan public earlier today, and we'll lead with that in just a moment. But before we get into why he apologized, Ira, good evening to you. Interesting times. It feels like every week that we sign back on for this show, we're so much wiser because stuff we've never seen before hits us in droves, and we just learned that in the day and age that we're covering college football, be ready for the unexpected and the novel, because this is the era we live in.
Yeah, man. Back in the day, I was thinking about this earlier because, Jeff made a comment or somebody asked us on headlines about doing PR for the university. And I was thinking back in the day, like one of the biggest headaches for, the sports information staff at Florida State or any school was like what a player might say on media day. Like media day was always kind of a day when a lot of the players would, maybe get a little loose, kind of say something bold. I remember the year Darnell Dockett declared that he wants to buy an ambulance when he goes to the NFL. Like his first big purchase is going to be an ambulance, and it was harmless, but just like goofy things like that were the concerns. Now they have to worry about a player going on live stream on TikTok and maybe trashing the coaching staff. So it's a different world. And I do think, though, on that topic, and we'll talk about his apology in here in a second, but I think for a fan base, we all have to acknowledge that it's a different world, and I think probably younger people probably take some of this stuff in stride, and you're much younger than me, but I think people my age and older still have a memory of what college football is supposed to be, the way players are supposed to act, the way players are supposed to act towards their coaches. And I also think, man, it's a different world, and we all kind of have to either roll with it or just get mad and yell at the clouds more often.
I might be younger than you, sir, but I think on issues like this, we stand on the same side of the line, which is, we kind of scratch our heads that something like this is possible. I remember it started a few years ago when Travis Hunter was still in high school, well, more than a few years ago now, and he's live streaming and talking about his commitment status to Florida State, and people are asking him, hey, why don't you commit and go somewhere else? He says, no, I'm 100% locked into Florida State, and that kind of stuff would make the boards. That kind of stuff would make my group texts with my friends who were in their 30s and saying, hey, well, apparently Hunter was just live video gaming, and he said that, hey, there's nothing to worry about with Florida State. I mean, this reminds me of having a discussion with Jeff on the air about cynicism in regards to sports. I grew up in the era of free agency, and so sometimes our thoughts on, mercenaryism were a little bit different because I grew up into it. This takes it to an exponential level, man, that you need to worry about somebody playing Madden or CFB 26 and then just airing it out, and then it being live updated unofficially by a subscriber of Warchant.com and the tribal council play-by-play as stuff is going. You just kind of have to be prepared for weirdness like this, I suppose.
Yeah, and the only clip that I've seen that was actually, so again, just to recap for people that haven't been paying close attention, Ashlyn Barker, one of FSU safeties, who had said he was going to go in the portal and then decided not to go in the portal and stay at Florida State, was on his TikTok live streaming, playing video games. And basically the only part I've seen that was recorded was the part where he talked about, when are we going to go get some defensive linemen? Why do we keep signing defensive backs? We need to sign more defensive linemen. Not only do we not have enough guys to rotate, we may not have enough guys to practice. And, it's a valid concern, honestly. I mean, I could see where he would feel that way, especially if you're a defensive back. You want to know that they've got good defensive linemen in front of you, but it just doesn't need to be on live streaming. Now, in his mind, he may have thought, well, I'm just with some friends. The problem is all it takes is one person to get on and to screen capture it and then put it out there. And now all of a sudden you basically held a press conference, Ashlyn. But he put out a statement today apologizing. And really to me, that says a lot. The fact that he did an apology, not that it says a lot about what he said or that maybe that means he feels bad. It says that the Florida State's coaches, feel like he's a valued part of the team. He made a mistake. He can learn from it. This isn't the end of the world. If there are other players in that locker room, I can tell you for a fact, including some that have already been pushed into the portal. Some of the players that left or they go into the portal each year are not voluntary. They're pushed out. If Ashland was a guy that they've had problems with, they wouldn't let him put out this statement and stay. So this tells you that he's probably been a solid dude for the most part. They want to keep him. They think he can learn from it, and they're going to give him that chance.
And with Florida State going after as many defensive backs as Florida State has in the last week or so, last 5 days really, including another safety they land today in the portal, signs from Duke, you just wondered in that moment, like this morning when that happens, I mean, it was instant that Florida State adds another member to the secondary. You think, oh, well, respect my decision. I'm entering the transfer portal post is coming, not, as you described, an apology here from Ashland Barker. So now Florida State gets over this this latest PR moment, Ira. I think it's symptomatic to a degree of a feeling of coming off of 2 disappointing seasons and not knowing where to place your frustrations. I think it's a human moment, but it's also a teachable moment. I know immediately I sound like the old guy who admonishes a young kid in that situation, but I think that's the truth of what we just watched here in the last day. Is I understand completely why he would have those feelings, but when you decide to share them in a public forum, now it's open season and open for debate, and it can damage you. It could damage your rev share number. It could damage a whole bunch of things. We've seen that also, kids overplaying their hands just straight down the line when it comes to negotiations. Rodney Hill's a cautionary tale for that reason. This can affect your money is the teachable moment that once you put it out there, people will capture it and people will discuss it out in the open.
Yeah, without question. And, and I do think it, from a big picture standpoint, also the other way to look at it is, it does illustrate, the challenge for the players to stay locked in and to not get caught up in the negativity and everything else. The reality is the transfer portal is still going to be open for another week. I brought this up on headlines, but like if Ashland Barker wants to be mad about Florida State's not going and getting some defensive linemen, he can kind of be mad at maybe Mandrell and Darryl Desir, because the fact that they are still in this limbo, that's a lot of money that Florida State has kind of tied up in hoping that those guys stay and they can work it out and they keep them. If those guys leave, or if they knew they were going to leave, then they could, free up that money and go in a different direction. So, again, man, this is it's just all unprecedented. We're all living in a time that we've never seen before, has never happened before. And, there's going to be a lot of, and it's a crappy situation. The system is screwed up and we're all just kind of having to live through it.
And we could talk about that a little bit here on the Monday Smash on a Tuesday night. We will in just a moment. Mekhi Jones is the name of the safety that Florida State signs out of the transfer portal from Duke. He'll be in the fold for Florida State now with a couple other players that were brought in the last 5 or 6 days. If you like the Monday Smash to get you caught up on all these details, our own Matt Lasser, Nick Carlisle are going to join us and take over the program here in about a half an hour's time to discuss the latest happenings in the portal and also take your questions on what Florida State needs to do moving forward. Just a housekeeping note in terms of portal action. While Florida State added somebody today, you can always accept a commitment during this period of time. We are in a dead period. Strangely enough, the portal is only open for 2 weeks, but 3 days out of those 2 weeks, you can't accept visits on campus because of the coaches convention that was going on. And I think it was in the state of Texas.
It's in Charlotte this year.
Off in the state of Texas. All right, so it's in Charlotte this year. That dead period extends into tomorrow. So if you're looking for, hey, where are the kids coming on campus? You got to wait till Thursday for that. You can get clarification on all those little details and the important details that have happened in the last few days. Matt and Nick will take over the program in a little bit. Go ahead.
Real quick on that, Matt, there's a story up on the website. It's not one of the top couple stories anymore. It's gotten pushed down by news, but Matt had a story this morning about some of the players that they're expecting to get in on visits on Thursday and later this week, and a bunch of defensive guys, some defensive linebackers and a defensive end as well.
So if you have questions for those guys, make sure Director Nick is behind the scenes right now. He's collecting that data for a little bit later in the program. We're also going to talk about the Desirs. How can we not? Those names mean something to me, Ira. They mean I wince when I hear them right now. Just the name Desir. I go, oh. please tell me that we've reached a conclusion. Long story short, we have not yet. But we're going to also break down some contract details that were released today. Public records request, Warchant obtained information on some of the new hires that are in Tallahassee. All that in a second after we talk about our sponsor of tonight's show, State Farm agent Russ Voris, who, hey, good news, Ira. It's not just me who can speak to his excellence. How about Florida man in Alabama who's jumped on board? Way to go, Florida man in Alabama. He
Nice.
says, Russ's team cut my auto and renter's insurance in half last week. Obligatory shout out to Russ and Cade. So a new customer from the Smash family is now a part of State Farm agent Russ Voris empire. I'm just like Florida man in Alabama. I got auto. I got a policy on the downtown penthouse I have here in Tallahassee. They're an excellent, excellent operation, Ira. Russ is as knowledgeable as it comes in this field, and he's as knowledgeable in the insurance field as he is passionate about Florida State.
Yeah, we felt some of that passion this past weekend, I think, in a little group text with Russ talking about what's going on with FSU football, excuse me. But yeah, no, it's there. He's got 2 offices over there in Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park. And if you are anywhere in Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, if you can't get to the office, you can still reach out to them, go to their website, russvorhis.com, russvorhis.com. Or you can call the offices. If you're watching on YouTube, you got the phone numbers on the screen, and you can call the offices and set up a consultation that way, or you can go online and get some information as well. And Russ is a huge Nole, and he really just does a very good job in terms of trying to meet all of your needs. And when they can cut your costs, that's certainly the huge benefit. But the other part of it is just reliable, solid insurance and just good people. And please mention the Monday Smash or Tuesday Smash and Warchant and Ira and Tom when you reach out to Russ and his staff.
Russ is the man. Call him today. I like that Orange Park number, 904-276-9535. That's the one that I use to get my policies updated from State Farm agent Russ Voris. The contract information that came out today, Ira, shortly after Seminole headlines had wrapped from 1 to 3 here on Warchant TV, it was John Garrett, Florida State's new position coach hires, and also Taylor Edwards, behind the scenes, another support staff member, front office staff member. What did you learn, and did any of the numbers make your eyebrows raise, or did it seem just about the range that you thought, or contract term, all those details that you learned today after Warchant put in a public records request?
The contract terms don't usually change a whole lot from person to person. And these were actually I think it was the letters of understanding, the way the process works. And part of the reason announcements don't come out for the news cycle for new hires, generally news gets broken that they're going to hire somebody, that somebody's accepted the job. Then there's several days where they have to go past background checks and all of that. Then they sign, initially they'll sign a letter of understanding within the first couple of days. Then they have to pass background checks before they can do the official contracts. And then in that process, then once the background checks and all that information clears, then they'll announce publicly that somebody's been hired. So these were actually the letters of understanding. It doesn't have all the language, but basically it's pretty similar to normal. If Florida State were to fire any of these people, and it's John Garrett, Taylor Edwards in the front office, and then 3 of the new assistant coaches, if Florida State fires any of them before their 2 years are up, Florida State actually will owe them 75% of their remaining contract. I think with some in the past, it's been 80%. I know with Mike Norvell, I think, and head coaches, it's been 80%, but it'll be 75% with them. And then, or if they leave beforehand, then I believe they actually owe the remainder of their contract. There's some other things in there, like, the car allowance and moving allowance and those types of things, but those are the big numbers. Nothing shocking. I mean, so John Garrett's going to make basically an average of $600,000 a year. It's good work, good money. For the next 3 years, that's not out of line. I mean, it's paid well, but it's not like the top end of GMs across the country. It's probably, in the 10 to 20 range, somewhere in there, when you factor in private schools as well, who don't report their numbers. And it's also a new position. Some schools don't have that level of position. And Taylor Edwards is going to be somewhere about 400, 450, 425 for his 2 years. But you look at that, and that 2 positions, that's $1 million. And so, for the people that thought that was just, a token gesture, I mean, Florida State doesn't want to just spend $1 million just to spend $1 million. Like, that's an investment in those two people. And then they've already said that they're going to add staff members below them to kind of flesh out that recruiting and scouting staff. So they're making a real investment there. Again, time will tell how effective they are, but it shows the investment they're making.
And then the 3 assistant coaches with terms are Blue Adams, he's the cornerbacks coach, running backs coach Cam Martin, edges coach Nick Williams. Williams is going to make an average of $500,000 for 2 seasons. Adams, an average of, he'll receive $400, then $500, so an average of $450 over 2 seasons. And then Martin, $425 in year 1 and $450 in the second year. It's funny, I see these numbers now, Ira, and I think about what type of position player, starter, or backup it could land you in the rev share era out of the portal. I'm like, oh, that could be like a guard, or that could be a defensive lineman or a defensive end, because that's the world we live in now, where the dollars and the cents are being counted, rev shares, NIL. It's all part of our daily discussions, and it's something that obviously is at the forefront of Florida State fans' minds when it comes to the Desir twins. Before I get into some of the stuff that I've learned and heard over the last week, I just wonder, you've been involved in this. You've had some intel, and we've had lots of discussions over the last week about, the updates and making sure that language is proper and representative of what the intel says. Just from your perspective, how would you define this Desir twins storyline since or last week?
It's one of those things where I don't think anybody feels good about it. Certainly the fan base doesn't feel good about it. I think there are plenty of fans who are like, you know what? If you want to be here, great. If you don't want to be here, fine. And there are some people who are mad because the Desir twins, have a contract in place and they wanted to renegotiate. And then there's different accountings of how that process is going. They're working, they have an agent working, an agency working on their behalf. So fans, I think, are very frustrated. I think there are some fans who are just mad that it's not done yet, that Florida State hasn't been able to lock them in. From the Florida State administration standpoint and coaching staff standpoint, I think they're not happy because, they felt like they maybe had put together a deal, and different points during this process, they felt like they've gotten to the point where the deal should be done and then it's not done. I think the Desir's agent has not always been real happy with the way Florida State's negotiated. So nobody's happy. But I think the way I'm looking at it, and I talked to Corey and Jeff and I talked about it some on the headlines today, because Corey, I think, is at the point where he's pretty frustrated by the whole thing. But my point is, it's one of those things, I think you just have to judge by the end results. Like, I don't think you can worry about how it got there. If it gets across the finish line and they stay, it's a win for Florida State. They're not going to be easily replaced unless other players go in the portal that somehow, but even then, now you're going to be on the other side of it in terms of negotiation, because you're going to have to buy that player probably out of their deal wherever they are. And you're going to be negotiating in the open market against everybody else. So, I think it's best for Florida State to get them, but at the same time, it's got to be frustrating because this has been going on now for over a week. I mean, it's been over a week now. The press conference, John Garrett, when he was introduced, was on a Monday. Here we are the following Tuesday. And on that Monday, they announced they were going to go in the portal. Here we are 8 days later. They're still not officially in the portal. Probably going to happen here soon. We'll see how that works out. But or they'll take their name out and decide to stay. So it's just, I think it's one of those things where I think everybody's pretty miserable. But if you can get across the finish line, I think you'll end up feeling good about it because you're better off with them than you are without them.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You're a worse off team if they're not a part of it next year. And the market isn't flush with options. You would have some cash to reappropriate. Yeah. But in this instance, in this specific portal window, there's just not a whole lot out there, which is why you're probably somewhat in the circumstance that you're in to begin with, because the market's thin and teams are looking for, through back channels, solutions on the defensive line, and some big name teams are trying to do that. I think this is a situation, Ira, in the last week where there are different points at which I think it's fair to say you can blame one side or the other. Like, both of them have their share in the blame, in the blame. But then there's another part of me, it's like paradoxical. I don't blame either side because this is the system that we're in right now, and I understand where both of them are coming from. So there might be fault on both sides at different points in this negotiation, but I don't blame either group. because they're trying to do what is best in the interest of the program or their clients. And the market's the market, and the price is the price. I think what's true is that they're going to fetch a lot of money at the end of this, the agency, for the Deuceers, whether that's through Florida State or not. This is not something where Florida State is being bamboozled because there's no golden ticket that's actually out there and no better offer or no rich offer that's available to the Deuceers. I think it's out there and it's real. But what's been interesting to watch here on the micro side of it is, from what I understood last week, they should have been in the portal kind of nowish, and that we're at 7:30 p.m., nearly 7:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and they're not. I just find that interesting. It's not a critical detail in this moment because of the aforementioned dead period, that they can't actually visit somewhere else. The Deuceers couldn't hop on a plane and go to wherever, Ohio State, LSU, Ole Miss, name your team, until Thursday. But that is the next big piece here, absent an agreement being established and announced from Florida State and the Deuceers. That's the next big thing here to see, is will their names appear in the portal. It's just been such a back and forth process that I've almost not pushed back away from the intel, but like the idea that, hey, we're close here or there's no hope here. It reminds me of a high school recruiting situation in that regard. It's been wild.
Yeah. And the problem with it, and again, I think where this sport is so screwed up right now is it's not like in, pro sports where, first of all, you only do this once every 5 years, once every 7 years. Like, you don't have this constant renegotiations, if they did sign a deal during the summer, which I think is something you've been reporting, or that, at some point during the process, they got a revised deal from when they originally signed as recruits. If that's true, then, in pro sports, you wouldn't be back at this a few months later, but that's how this works. And the same thing comes from a year from now. If they have a great season, and if Mike Norvell stays, or if he doesn't stay, if it's a new coaching staff, whatever it is, they're going to have to do this again. And it's just, and then from a fan's perspective, you get so mad because you feel like this is not the fabric of what our team should be. Like, yeah. We should have a team where everybody's pulling together. And right now, this time of year right now, they should already be going through some offseason workouts. They should be, going through meetings. That's all happening. They should be marching in the right direction, the same direction, building their the chemistry on this team in the offseason. And this is all still going on. So and I think that, goes back to the Ashland Barker thing. I think that was some of his frustration boiling over, because this situation sucks. But it is what it is. It's not totally unique to Florida State. I just think Florida State is magnified because they're coming off of two bad seasons. They are the agents know that they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. They know what the market is. They know they're hard to replace, and so they're going to put their screws to them. But that's, to your point, that's their job. And while it's ridiculous that there's a negotiation every year now, they're playing the game that's there. And so it's hard to blame them. But I understand from a fan's perspective, this sucks.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, to clarify that, in the beginning of the reporting last week, I couldn't confirm that a new deal was signed, but it was one of those things that it had to have been, because the number out of high school was low on their rev share deals, that a buyout wouldn't be prohibitive. Like, if they were still on their high school deal and they really wanted to leave, no schools would have batted an eyelash at a potential offset language or a buyout figure for the Deuceers. So, without being able to prove and confirm that something happened, it was just a matter of when. And as the last week went along, I was educated that it looks like before the season, that the offseason work that they did going into the 2025 campaign was enough that Florida State tried to be proactive there, get out in front of the situation. And they did and they didn't, because you could say, well, it was meaningless that they negotiated that next deal. Not really, because the offset language and the buyout language, I think, has put Florida State in a position here, Ira, to where they do have some semblance of leverage, that this is still a conversation. And that's where we talked about this last Monday, that one of the storylines this offseason is that buyout language and offset language actually is being honored and actually has teeth. Since we last spoke last week, the Washington situation has come and gone. They had a quarterback who signed a contract days before he decided he was going to try to leave the Wisconsin Huskies program. and he went back with his tail between his legs to play football again for Washington. So had Florida State not taken that step in the preseason or just before the kickoff against Alabama, whenever precisely it was, they wouldn't be in a position to make as much money if the Deseers do leave and a buyout has to be paid to Florida State.
So, and the Washington story is a great example. Okay. And this is where I push back at the fans and some people in the media who will say that it's not happening everywhere else. This is unique to Florida State. Man, that's your quarterback. To me, if your quarterback signs a deal, it says he's coming back, then says he's not coming back, he's going to leave, and there's already reports of schools he's linked to, but now he's got to come back again. Man, the quarterback's your leader of your team. So it's just a mess everywhere. There's different shades of how big of a mess this is. But to me, imagine if Jordan Travis had done that coming out for 2022. I mean, that's a huge deal, but they're going to take him back. And if he plays well, everything will be fine. And that's where I look at the Deseer twins, and it's like, this is messy as it goes on. But if they end up staying, like everything's going to go on like normal because everybody's going to be happy that they're here and not somewhere else. I just think that it's just an awful situation, but they're making the best of it they can. Now, the one thing I did want to mention, because you were talking about over the weekend, somebody I talked to over the weekend was basically said, and this had me thinking maybe this probably is not going to work out with them and maybe some of these other players, was, just talking to somebody at Florida State who said, at some point we have to say enough. We've met the demands. We've done everything we can do. We're already paying over market value. Like there's several of these players that Florida State has signed that they paid over what they think they should have signed. Like when they went into the process, they thought this player might be worth this amount of money, but they've gone above that, sometimes way above that, because they do want to keep these players and because they know it's going to be hard to replace them. But in some of these cases, they've done all that, and then the player still wants more, or the agent still demands more, or different concessions. And at some point, what do you do? Like, can you just keep saying yes? And so it's a difficult situation, man. And the fact that Florida State, again, is in the situation they're in, it's magnified.
Yeah, if this is something that ends with the Deseers departing Florida State, I can tell you already from just monitoring this and learning how it's gone back and forth, you can't be mad at Florida State in this situation. There will be some, and there have been some, maybe this very cycle, where I would say differently, hearing how things went behind the scenes. I think Florida State's done a pretty good job here of doing what it can to make sure the Deseers come back. Karen puts this in the chat. She says a contract is a contract, and I fully understand where that frustration comes from on the fan side, saying enough is enough. If we make an agreement happen, if you sign a piece of paper and then maybe you want to come off of that piece of paper and we verbally agree to terms and then you push for more and more and more, like Ira just said, enough is enough at some point. But here's the problem. These contracts they have express language that basically grants you the leverage to revisit terms. That buyout number is large. It's significant. It's upper six figures, if not seven figures. It's what we reported. That's what you've seen on the Tribal Council if you're a Warchant subscriber over the last week. But if somebody's willing to pay that, you can come back to Florida State and say, somebody's willing to pay that. Would you like to continue to talk to us for maybe a higher number? That is within your right as an agent to come back to the university. Even though there is a contract, Ira, that is a point of negotiation. The negotiation just seems to never stop in some circumstances, and that's where the fatigue comes in, I think, for everybody involved.
Yeah, and it's, but again, it's just this is where we are. As far as the process goes, you mentioned earlier with the Deseer twins, we thought, whether or not their names show up in the portal, or if their names do show up in the portal officially, which as of now we don't believe they have, if they do, say tomorrow morning, they still can't visit anywhere tomorrow. So if you see reports that, at some point, maybe tomorrow morning, that they've officially entered the portal, they still can't visit anybody till the next day because of the dead period. And theoretically, if everything's above board, you'd like to think that they couldn't even talk to another school till tomorrow and then schedule the trip till Thursday and then maybe get somewhere the next. So there's some lag time in there. of course, we saw Florida State. I mean, they signed a kid today, or got a commitment from a player today from Duke, that DB you mentioned earlier, who went in the portal, I think yesterday, and didn't even take a visit and committed to Florida State. So that can happen too. And we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think for me, the way it's been described to me is if the Deseers hop on a plane to go to a campus and arrive on a campus for a visit, that's pretty much it. But you can't even say that still. I mean, nothing is 100% until the portal window closes and a new deal is officially signed. So stay tuned for all those details, as annoying as they might be. You go to warchant.com for the blow-by-blow. I promise you, on the tribal council this last week, thousands of words have been written on the Desir situation specifically and all the happenings back and forth. Today was a day just like many others in the last 7 or 8 days, which is there was optimism for a good stretch of time. There was pessimism for a good stretch of time. This tale of two cities eventually will end. But if you want to learn how it all happens, what's coming up, you want to head over to the portal and recruiting board to learn about visits that are upcoming, details, intel, sign up for warchant.com. It's 50% off. 50% off. This is the portal special, the ultimate fan bundle, Warchant, On3, and Rivals. All of those powers combined for national coverage. Obviously, our coverage of Warchant's why you're here in the first place for Florida State. And then you also get a year's access to The Athletic, which is really, really cool to round out your professional sports portfolio as well. Head over to warchant.com and sign up today. So many of you have, and we say welcome to all of those of you that have. I think we put enough of a emphasis on the Deseers, Ira. Do you think? I mean, basically right now it's still the waiting game is the long and short of it, that I'd say. Optimism comes and goes. Pessimism comes and goes. We're just kind of stuck in limbo, maybe for another day, maybe not for another day. And that's where it stands. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And, and again, I think that what they end up doing, though, is going to change the complexion of this team. Because if they stay, then that's money that Florida State won't be able to use in these last several days of the portal. And if they go, now Florida State's got a lot more money to work with. The portal will only be open for players to go in until the 16th, which I think is Saturday. Is that right? That's the last day the players can go into the portal. But once they're in the portal, it can be whenever after that they actually sign. So Florida State, if that money becomes available, they'll still be doing some shopping. Either way, they are still doing some shopping. There's players that Florida State's looking to add. Definitely, I think the offense, it seems like they're probably about done on offense. Defensively, though, got to get some help on linebacker, got to get some help on the defensive line, defensive end especially. And especially if the Desir twins stay, defensive end becomes the big priority. But if they leave, then, across the defensive line. But plenty more news. Again, this process isn't over. When the Desir twins make their decision, there's a lot more that Florida State's trying to do here.
I think that, there are a couple of decisions that are heavily and directly related to their move that might happen in short order before or after, based upon how Florida State feels about that situation. We're going to take a question or two of yours, also talk about specifically the offensive side of the ball and the work that Florida State has done, the transfer portal there. After this 15-second message from our sponsor tonight, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis.
Contact Russ Voorhis for an auto quote today.
Florida man in Alabama says, Tom and Ira, let's redirect some of this negative football energy towards the guy at the ACC scheduling office for 9 p.m. tip-offs for East Coast teams. Yes, that's right. There's a basketball game going in about an hour and 20 minutes. Florida State on the road at Syracuse, and there will be breakdown reporting on that game. You can expect at warchant.com after Florida State and Syracuse tip-off at a ridiculous hour, but they've got to pay the bills, Ira. This is what the ACC network needs. They need inventory, right?
And if you are a new subscriber to warchant.com, you can go over to the Seminole Hoops message board. Aslan and Corey are going to be running a thread where you can go in there. They'll have updates from the game, but also there's a running chat. People will be, communicating about the game as it goes on. But yeah, it's just TV. And this one's on the ACC network, right? I think this game is, but usually, yeah, it's just what ESPN or the ESPN has time slots. ACC network has time slots they have to fill. And if there's not a West Coast game available or Central time, they're gonna put in an East Coast team at 9:00, and that's where Florida State is. It's gonna be an interesting game for Florida State because they played so poorly on Saturday, got blown out by NC State. Syracuse is not a great team, but this is another road game. We'll see what this team looks like. Florida State has just been very up and down. Before the blowout to NC State, they had looked good against Duke and Carolina. Before that, they had not looked very good. So, every time it's something different. But yeah, this game tonight, well, I'm not going to say it's going to be telling in terms of like a referendum, but it's just another piece of the puzzle for this basketball team.
Yeah, interested to see about the intensity level and how they look, especially when they're giving up a little bit of size on the road. Yeah, could be interesting to see. That's what's brewing. I'm going to ask Ira, what brewed? What brewed earlier today? Because Ken the Carver's got a question, and we have to honor a question from elite headliner Ken the Carver. He gives us gifts all the time, and he doesn't have to. He's a very generous person. But he says, does Ken, on headlines, y'all discuss poor financial management. Explain how those issues were mishandled and whether the deficit is too large to recover from in the near future. So I can kind of guess just being around you guys all the time, Ira, maybe where you stand on these particular issues. But how did that discussion go today and about these NIL ins and outs? What was your take on how that discussion went down on headlines from 1 to 3?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what we've been talking about for a long time. I mean, it's just this process of trying to figure out what the landscape is going to be, what the rules are going to be. When the first few years of NIL, it became the Wild Wild West, and there were basically no parameters, and players you get Texas Tech comes in the market a couple years ago with Cody Campbell, their billionaire. Everybody's got their billionaire in the corner. Not everybody, but a lot of schools now have a billionaire or a couple money people in their corner that are floating a lot of this spending. And it was totally the Wild Wild West. Well, then they went to this approach. They had the House settlement, and they were going to turn to revenue sharing. That was going to be ostensibly some sort of a salary cap to kind of rein things in. And then NIL would be limited to legitimate NIL deals. So say you had $17 or $18 million to work with to fund your roster, and then maybe you could get a couple $1 million or a few $1 million worth of legitimate NIL deals for your roster. So the whole roster payroll would be somewhere around the neighborhood of $20, $21, $22 million, which would have been way higher than what it was even 3 years ago. The year that Florida State in 2023, when they had that great season and they had a high payroll, it was nowhere near $20 million from what my understanding at the time. And so this is, but now that's so the theory was, and Michael Alford and a lot of administrators were pushing for that to be kind of the limit. Well, as you look at how teams are spending, look at Texas right now. Texas is spending like drunken sailors. LSU, the numbers put out there for signing Sam Leavitt, the different players that are out there, they're commanding $5-6 million deals. Clearly, that's not falling within the boundaries of what everybody thought it might be. And so, Jeff's argument all along has been that's never going to happen. You need to be prepared to spend unlimited money because that's what these other schools are going to do. I don't think Florida State was prepared for that. And so here they are. And so, Florida State's going to have a good budget. The one thing I would say though, and I tried to mention this in my column the other day, it's not like Florida State hasn't spent on football. This past year, their total budget for their payroll for their football team last year was like $24-25 million. So they even went over it last year by front loading their NIL money. They spent way too much money to go 5-7. So that season wasn't a result of being poor or being broke or not willing to spend money. Just like there are teams that overperform what their budget is. But if you do want to compete, at the highest levels, you want to be in the ballpark with these other teams. And Florida State's certainly not in the ballpark with a lot of those teams right now.
Yeah, here. That's the kick to the teeth of the last year. The last season was they were very aggressive in front loading ahead of the House settlement because they knew that was a way that the system's about to change. So let's make sure that we make the first 6 months of the calendar year of 2025 very good for us. And then they didn't pay it off on the field. I mean, in the end, all of these things we're talking about, it could be about the Deuces, the offense, the defensive line, the linebackers in the portal. If you win, you have a much better chance to land players out of the portal. You have much more money to work with to land players out of the portal because fan interest is at a higher level. And spending all that money to win just 5 games just twice, I'm sorry, after starting 3-0. It has just the kick to the teeth that has helped hamper this process. You're listening right now to What's Brewing, brought to you by the Copper Drip, our sponsor. The Copper Drip, an outstanding local outfit that now I got their gear, and I'm such a dolt, Ira. It's on the counter in my kitchen right now, but I met Brandon last week. I got to shake his hand. He's a local firefighter here in Tallahassee. Awesome. One half of the operation, not the brains behind the operation necessarily, or the heart behind the operation.
He's more of the brawn and some of the passion, but Sierra's probably the real the engine of the Copper Drip.
He's got designs on making sure that you're aware, does Brandon, about the Copper Drip, and that's where I love him. He has a good marketing mind, and that's why he joined us here on the Smash, because he wants you to know more about the Copper Drip. This episode is sponsored in part by the Copper Drip, a specialty coffee brand built on purpose and quality, sourcing premium coffee beans from around the world. The Copper Drip partners with producers who focus on ethical sourcing and living wages for farmers, and each roast is crafted for bold, smooth, well-balanced flavor from light to dark roasts, and they've got coffee options that fit every style. If you got whole bean grinding equipment, you're good there. K-Cups, instant coffee, it's all available to you. And if you're watching anywhere in our footprint on Warchant TV, they can ship to you from the Copper Drip. This is a local Tallahassee/North Florida-based company, but they will ship to anybody who is watching us or listening to us here on the Smash. An outstanding operation.
Yeah, and they source the beans from all over the world, and they really do a good job in terms of how they. And there's a lot of information on their website about how they source, what farmers they use, what their kind of ethical standards are for their coffee. Did you go with the K cups, or did you go with the beans? We do the beans because Kim likes to grind the beans at the house. Would you end up going with?
So I got the beans for the grinder. I've got the decaf beans this go around because I like to use it for cocktail making. And look. Yeah. I love an espresso martini as much as the next person, actually too much, but that is essentially just a fancier, better tasting Red Bull vodka or Four Loko. So let's dial back the caffeine a little bit. That's why I went with the decaf. Delicious. Absolutely delicious. It doesn't have to just be for breakfast, Ira. It can be for having some fun too, the products of the Copper Drip.
And if you go to, actually within the next week, I think definitely go to their social media. They're on Instagram, and they're on mostly Instagram, also Facebook, I believe. But they'll have information about where they're going to be around Tallahassee. And he's going to, I think next week, going to have some dates for us, some festivals coming up, events that they're going to be out in person with the kiosk that Brandon actually built by hand, which is crazy to me. But anyway, but if you're in other parts of the country, go to thecopperdrip.com and you can have it shipped to you. And again, my wife is much more of a coffee connoisseur than I am. She loves it, and I love it too. But her vote counts a little bit more because she's had every different kind of coffee you can imagine.
Head to thecopperdrip.com and get 15% off with promo code MSMASH15. Use code MSMASH15 and brew something meaningful, or book the Copper Drip for your next event. I was going to talk about the offense and the work that was done there. A couple questions before Matt and Nick take over to discuss more portal questions. So if you want to get in depth about what's coming up in the next few days, that is happening in moments here on Warchant TV. Matt Lasser, Nick Carlisle, the Warpath/Monday Smash edition of the show coming up in just a second. We've got a fun question from Big Nasty Nole, Ira. He says, fun question for 2016. What is going to be the bright spot in 2026? And you can't say Deuce or Danzy. And since we last spoke, Mekhi Danzy did announce he was coming back for the season, which means Florida State is in all the better position at the wide receiver core. Javen Boggs coming back as well for next season.
Yeah, if I can't say the receivers, I mean, obviously the offense in general, I think is going to be the strong point of this football team. But I'm excited about Trey Wisner.
He's Wisner. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Former Texas running back. Again, I think some people thought that was a peculiar signing because he's a kind of high profile guy, ran for 1,000 yards a couple of years ago, but I actually love it. I don't know if Usman Cromall loves it. We'll see how that plays out. But I do think Trey Wisner is a guy that, again, it's a potential of a special player. I'm not trying to tell anybody he's Barry Sanders, but I felt like the reason I didn't get so as mad as a lot of people did about the running back rotation last year is, other than a few plays by Cromall, I didn't feel like we saw a whole lot of special no matter who was back there. And if this kid has some of that, it's a big deal. I mean, Jimbo used to say, if he has to scheme up every yard for a running back, he's got the wrong running back. And man, if they went out and got this guy while they already have Chroma, and as much as they invested in Chroma, to me, I think Gus thinks he's probably pretty special. And so to me, he's a guy that I'm really excited to see.
Scott has a question here. I would agree. There's that in the offensive line. They've gotten, for what is considered to be a weaker market than last year in the portal on the offensive line. Florida State's been very aggressive there. And obviously Xavier Chaplin committed to Florida State since we last spoke. They got the Auburn transfer over Kentucky, which was a big and positive development for FSU. Going to be some legitimate competition there, especially the interior of the offensive line coming up in spring camp. Scott asks, Tom or Ira, anything on the horizon to end this madness? Collective bargaining, maybe. I do think, while it's still a mess, Ira, this offset language having teeth is a good thing, because I think in the next cycle, schools are going to try and raise that figure consistently to try to deter actions being taken, or at least the frequency of tampering and actions being taken. I think they might offer kids a little bit more money earlier in their career if they show signs of life and production, but it's going to come with a higher offset or buyout language, because they know that other schools are honoring this process, at least for right now, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's a big positive. The other thing is, and again, I just, part of the reason the restraints or the guardrails haven't gone up is the way some people hoped they would, was because some schools just decided to not play the rule. Like, we're not going to go by that. We're not going to sign your papers. We're going to sue you if you try to limit what these guys can make. And that's all fine. But I do think now you've got a lot more schools that are not happy. The SEC being shut out of the Final Four, the SEC not having the national champion for the third straight year, that I really think, and this is something that Florida State has been banking on, that it's not just Florida State that's frustrated, that it is a lot of other schools that traditionally have been at the top of the sport now are starting to struggle. And you've got this Final Four where you had Indiana and Oregon and Ole Miss and who's the fourth?
Indiana, Ole Miss,
Miami. And
who shall not be mentioned. Yes,
it's not, but it wasn't the SEC Invitational, and the SEC is not going to be in the national championship game. And so those schools, which have a lot of influence, and Greg Sankey, who has a lot of influence, I think are going to be pushing more, because they'd like to get it back to the way it was, because they can't control this right now. They can't control Texas Tech spending whatever they want to spend, or Mark Cuban spending whatever he wants to spend. So I think there's going to be more people coming to the table saying we need to rein this in. But to have collective bargaining, to have all this happen, they're probably going to need to be either get Congress involved or create some mechanism to where you can collectively bargain. You can't do that right now the way it's set up. So we'll have to see. But I do think the longer it goes on with those other powers struggling and not being able to get over get back to the championship game, I think that leads to more pressure to make something happen. That's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong.
It would be benefiting everybody if there could be more teeth. There are finally starting to be teeth in this system to deter schools away from just openly poaching players, but we could use some more. King Spleen, we'll get to Ira's one more thing in just a moment, and then give you the guys for portal coverage. King Spleen, Tom or Ira, are portal players negotiating rev share or NIL? Isn't NIL separate from the university? The answer is they are negotiating both, and it's a player-by-player basis. Some guys, they'll use rev share only. Some guys will get a higher percentage of NIL versus rev share. This is you have to pull from two buckets, and you got to make it all work under one number that you've established as an athletics department. This isn't an era King Spleen like it used to be, and Ira, correct me if I'm wrong, where just a few years ago, it's almost like the university couldn't acknowledge the existence of a collective, or they couldn't openly talk about or work with them. This isn't that. They're now allowed to work together at each university, collectives and rev share groups. And so both are being discussed. Now, the rev share contract can't have NIL components in it, as far as I understand, but they're using both tools in order to get these jobs done. Sometimes both tools with one player. Yeah.
And I think the mechanism for how, they can make this work is tricky. And that's part of the process. I mean, like even these schools that are spending insane amounts of money. Again, Texas, look at the players they've gone. They beat out some other heavy hitters for a bunch of dudes, a bunch of star players. So they're clearly, I mean, there's talk. I saw a report. I don't know if it's accurate, but an estimate that they might have a $40 million roster, because I think it's because they saw what Texas Tech has done and said, you know what? We're Texas. We're not going to let Texas Tech just go crazy. We're going to have to do the same thing. So now they're going, but you do have to figure out a way to get these things through the process of calling them NIL deals to anything over that 17 or $18 million. How they do that is a good question. Whether or not it gets stopped, the College Sports Commission is still kind of rattling some sabers that they are going to push back. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, it's just it's not a clean process, as Tom was saying. It's a lot about mixing and matching, making it work, and then trying to get it through the guidelines.
And if it sounds like it's half-baked, it kind of is. Everybody's kind of making it up as they go right now, as best they can, because the rules change so often. All right, the guys are coming up next here from the Warpath. Matt Lasser, Nick Carlisle discussing the happenings. Florida State adds a new signee to a transfer portal class today. They got visits coming up this week. A high-profile visitor is in line to be here on the defensive side of the ball. Your questions in that regard, they're going to be taking as well. Before we pivot to that, Ira, what do you have? One more thing. What would you like to promote?
I don't get my music though. Thank you. You mentioned that we were going to talk about offense. We didn't do that. We'll come back with a video probably on offense and defense, kind of where they're at and what they have left to do for this roster. But that's something that Matt and I are working on, is kind of looking at the roster, where they're at right now, what they have to, what holes they have to fill. We've kind of been waiting to try to see if we got some finality on the Desir twins, because that's such a big piece of the defensive side. But yeah, if you go to the website, warchant.com, pretty soon we'll have kind of a more comprehensive breakdown of what the roster looks like now, what the depth chart is expected to look like, what they still have to do in the portal going forward. And I'm sure we'll do an accompanying video piece as well.
The guys are coming up right next. If you love that little riff, that hard rock music as they count down from 30 seconds to the shows, that is what's going to play as we do a line change here for Director Nick. Matt Lasser, I see you in the green screen or the green room. For Ira Schofel, I'm Tom Lang. Thank you to State Farm agent Russ Forrest. Thank you to the Copper Drip for sponsoring tonight's program. They will be up next right here, Warchant TV, 30-second countdown. Here it comes, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, welcome back into the Monday/Tuesday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhees. Nick Carlisle with Matt Lasser here to take you the rest of the way tonight on a Tuesday night. Just like last week, folks, this portion of the show will be cut down, reposted separately later tonight. So if you are coming in later to the show, or you are in the future watching Matt and myself and we don't hit on something that you want to see discussed, that you want to see us talk about, there's a good chance that Ira and Tom talked about it earlier in the show. So check that on-demand VOD just in case. A busy day here in terms of live shows here at Warchant TV. If you have any questions, again, feel free to float those to us. We'll try and answer as many of those as we can. All right, buddy. First of all, how are you? Second of all, I know they weren't intentionally doing this, but after a week of almost exclusively offensive people or offensive prospects visiting FSU, now seems like a wave of defenses coming in this second week. There's multiple defensive players that are expected on campus on Thursday as soon as this dead period is over at midnight on Wednesday. Before we get to those visits, a new commitment for Florida State, and unfortunately for Ashling Parker, it's another safety. Mekhi Jones committing to Florida State by way of Duke, a really nice piece with multiple years of eligibility. Things developed really quickly here, buddy. I mean, the kid didn't even take a visit. Not every day that you see that these days in the portal. How'd that one come together?
Yeah, this was one that came together very, very quick. When he entered last night, I believe, it was mentioned that he was a name to watch. Actually, right before he committed, I was DMing with him trying to see if he was visiting on Thursday, and he said, "Oh, I'll get back to you." And about 30 minutes later, he committed. So I assume in that
I think
moment
he's visiting.
Yeah, I think there's a good shot he's visiting, maybe never leaving, because he's already signed now, right? That's been reported that he has signed with Florida State.
Not sure, but
well, but anyway, it's yeah. I think that's a really good pickup, man. Look at his stats as just a freshman are pretty good. And also it was interesting because you look at it and it says he's from New Jersey. And then I looked at his On3 profile and he's actually originally from Grayson, Georgia, Grayson High School. So not far up the road from Florida State.
Yeah. Didn't he go to Milton High School?
I didn't scroll back that far.
I think he went to Milton High School, and that's certainly a high school that Florida State has recruited over the years. In any event, a nice young piece to kind of supplement what you lost earlier in the portal window in terms of young defensive backs. Chris Jones, tell me about Chris Jones, Matt. He committed to Ole Miss early on, now decommitted. Now Florida State looking to get a second shot at somebody that I know that they really covet. They've got a bunch of linebackers coming in. Devin Hightower from University Alabama Birmingham, another one. Another kid from Cornell potentially. Taj Butler is another name that keeps getting floated out there. Is Jones the guy, for lack of a better term, or are they all on equal standing?
Oh, yeah. Jones is your top guy for sure. Like, that's an All-American or All-Sun-Belt player, whatever. He was coveted by a lot of teams out of the portal, like Ole Miss. You know, I've heard since he decommitted that multiple schools have reached out to him. Obviously, Florida State's the biggest one, just being that he had a visit scheduled. Well, I don't think it was ever officially scheduled. The date wasn't never set, but it was known that he was supposed to go to Florida State. Yeah, it was known he was supposed to go to Florida State after Ole Miss, and those were really the only two in it. I think Kentucky was mentioned at one point as a possible visit after Florida State or something like that. But yeah, when early on in the portal window, I want to say January 5th or January 4th, it was an Ole Miss Florida State battle that it was very clear. And now the issue with that was he was a Mississippi kid and he visited Ole Miss first. Pretty hard to like Mississippi kids, and Aslan will tell you this from working in Mississippi. They're one of two ways. They're either I never want to leave home and I need to be close to home and make it at home, or I want to be as far away from this place as possible. Get me out of here. And I think most people choose the first one of the two. So that was going to be hard to get once he was on campus at Ole Miss. And keep in mind, they were doing playoff practices at that time too, which is very appealing to anyone. Man, all they needed was some pass coverage, and maybe they would still be playing. But it's I think it's a good. Florida State's in a good spot for this one as of now. I still, he has told people that and us that he is going to be on campus on Thursday. I don't know how final that is from talking to some people around the recruitment. So I still think it's likely he shows up on Thursday. I'm just still waiting final word. That's why I put in the article, like, I think there's still some details to be finalized. And most of the time in these cases there are, because these things move so quickly. And man, in the portal, the way things change so quickly, like having a visit scheduled on Monday for Thursday. How often do you think that happens, Nick?
It's an eternity. That 4-day span in the portal is an actual eternity.
Long. Yeah. So again, as of now, I still think he will show up. I'm just preparing for the chance that he doesn't.
It's since we're talking about linebackers right now, actually just spent the last 5 minutes or so talking about Chris Jones, who transferring from Southern Miss, originally committed to Ole Miss. He's back on the market. If you want to rewind the bod for 5 minutes, you'll get all of that. There are some other linebackers that are expected on campus. I mentioned one of them, Devin Hightower from University Alabama Birmingham. He's jumped around a lot, Matt, but he had a very productive season last year.
Led the team in tackles with 81 last year.
Yeah, is he anywhere close to I don't want to say the level of Jones in terms of how much Florida State covets them, or covets him rather? Kind of where does Florida State stand on Hightower as a prospect? Is Jones the last one that they would want to bring in? Do they want to bring in 2 to 3 more? Kind of how is the pursuit of linebackers evolving here with a couple of days to go?
Yeah, not entirely sure yet. We're kind of waiting to see. Obviously, Chris Jones is your number one option, having, to work hard to get him off of Ole Miss and now to try to get him back on campus after, the start of that, right? Because that was probably your one identified very early. Obviously, they had a chance at Biles at one point, but that didn't really work out with the heavy hitters in that one. It kind of makes sense. Yeah, it's pretty obvious what the driving factor is in that recruitment. But it's or was in that recruitment because he is signed with Texas. But yeah, I think we kind of have to wait and see. I don't think it's a bad idea to bring in multiple linebackers. I think this room is pretty open, right? Because right now you have Omar Graham, Blake Nicholson. I think they're going to have more true jacks this year, like a Jalen Anderson, some other guys, Rylan Kennedy, which I actually have a cool thing coming on Rylan Kennedy that we can talk about later. But it's I think so you really need 2 true linebackers because the jack is the third. So I think, yeah, you could have a lot of rotation in that room. You want more rotation in that room too.
Please, for the love of God, get a linebacker that can cover the mesh rail. Oh my God, please. That's all I asked for my linebackers coming out of last season. Texas State edge Tamir Jackson is expected on Thursday as well, Matt. All of these guys are actually, I think a majority of them are. But Jackson is an interesting one because he's actually waiting on an NCAA waiver to be able to even be eligible for next season. Is there anything coming from his camp on the likelihood of that happening? And is this a primary target for FSU? I mean, I would assume sorry, go ahead.
You're good. So I have a little bit of a story on how this came to be. Jordan Sanders, a Texas State defensive lineman, obviously teammates with Jackson. I got that right? Jackson?
Yes.
The name? Cool. Sorry. We're at the point again where names just get all jumbled up and don't really have faces to names yet because I haven't seen them in person. But so anyway, yeah. From what Sanders told me, Sanders was pushing Florida State to look at him, and they looked at his film, and now they're getting him on campus, which is pretty cool. And with Sanders, I think that's one of those we have to wait for Desir dominoes to see how it's going to happen. But I like where Florida State sits. But it's we're just kind of I'm not really sure on the waiver. I'll say the track record of this year with waivers isn't great, right? Obviously, you had Trinidad Chambliss. The biggest one we'll all think of Tommy Castellanos, but that's not a JUCO waiver. The biggest one has been Trinidad Chambliss for the same reason. He didn't get it. So, again, I don't know what the case are, what makes this different. I haven't talked to him enough of what this makes this different from a Trinidad Chambliss or from a Thomas Castellanos. But, my hopes aren't too high just because the way the waivers have been so far this year.
We're going to get to some of your questions here on the Monday Smash. I want to start with Nolkev because Nolkev did donate during Seminole Headlines earlier today. So I do want to make sure that we get this question. And thank you for your donation, Nolkev. You're extremely generous as always. He said, I did ask earlier on Headlines, but with all these public negotiations and players poking fun at the program with how fans feel about Norvell, Alford, and company, is this going to be a likable team in 2026? I was actually thinking about that earlier this weekend, just with how many faces are coming in and coming out of the program and how that culture is going to be affected. You talk about the Desir twins, who are all really anybody wants to talk about right now with how much they've kind of dominated the social spaces surrounding this football team. I don't know if you can forgive and forget so quickly. I mean, there's a long way to football season, Matt. How likable do you think that this team can be?
If Deuce Robinson is the face, it'll be likable.
Yeah, the poster. I mean,
because you can't hate Deuce. Deuce is awesome.
No.
But in general, look, man, this has been the way it's been for 3-4 years now, right? Of most of your team is portal guys. I guess ever since more like 2-3 because after Jordan Travis left, that's when that's when it was pretty much all portal every year and the new quarterback, and Ashton Daniels is a very likable kid, very, very good kid too. From having interacted with him, he's one that I think that people will like. Someone who people are going to like is Jalen Anderson from interacting with him recently around the facility. That is one when newcomer interviews come around. I assume that'll be soon with kids enrolling and being on campus. But when newcomers interviews show up here in a few weeks, a month or whatever, watch when Jalen Anderson's name comes up. That's a day to pay attention because that'll be a great newcomer interview.
And it's going to be interesting. I think it depends on how much winning you can get done in the early part of the season because you do have so many of these guys flirted with the portal, entered the portal, got a pay raise, and came back. I mean, if you're winning, everything is going to be great. If you're losing, things are going to turn south pretty quickly in terms of likability. But I do agree with you. I think there are some guys, some leaders that can be extremely likable on this team. Karen was actually asking about it. So since we lost Little, is there anybody that looks like a good leader? I fully am on board with you about Ashton Daniels. Everything that we've heard coming out of the Auburn camp is that he's a great teammate, good in the classroom, all-around stand-up guy. He could be hopefully a better leader down the stretch than Tommy Castellanos was.
I mean, but for the defense, like obviously there's leaders on offense. You have Deuce, Ashton Daniels, maybe an experienced lineman like Xavier Chaplin could be that guy as well. Offense isn't the worry with leaders. Obviously, she's saying, Earl, it's defense. Everyone you'd hope for, there's an issue there. That's my problem right now.
Just a little bit.
Because like I would actually before yesterday, my answer would have been Ashlyn Barker.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
And obviously yesterday changed that. Now you could say that you could flip it and say like this might make him a better leader because he messed up and he has to go apologize to the team and do stuff like that and go and get in front of them. So you could flip it like that. KJ Kirkland maybe, but we don't know if he's a starter. Oh, Rawls. So Rawls has to be your number one leader on defense. After that is where it gets a little iffy, but definitely Rawls. I don't care if he went to the portal, whatever. That's happened already before, but he's a good kid too. So Rawls is probably your number one leader on defense.
An unconventional name, but work with me here. What about KJ Kirkland?
That's what I said. The only issue.
Oh, did you say KJ? I kind of blacked out for a second.
You're good. I do that all the time.
Deep in thought.
I would say KJ, but my only issue is, do we really know if KJ is going to start, especially with the guy they brought in today? He's definitely going to have to earn his spot
I think that's probably an indication that they don't see him as a starting piece. But
in my opinion, it's hard to be a leader when you're not a starter.
Yeah. I'm really struggling to think of any other names because, I mean, just so many people, so many guys have come and gone. I would have said Juice Cryer, but he's now in Texas. I mean, Juice that was a program guy. I mean, say what you want about his performance on the field. That was a program culture defining guy. It's gonna be interesting to see who develops. I think that's probably one of the first things that I'm gonna ask, or I hope Ira, Corey, Aslan, you ask when we talk to Mike in the spring, is who's emerging from this defensive side as a leader here. Continue with some of your questions.
First answer will be Rawls.
I would hope so. I would hope so. Savage Dad says, if the decision to move on from the Twins doesn't happen before Friday, doesn't it hamstring us in replacing them? Love to have them back, but this does seem kind of crazy. I think that's the game. I think that's the game of chicken that's being played right now, Savage Dad, is what's going to happen first. The Desirs enter the portal, the Desirs are retained, or Florida State says, enough, we've complied, we've done what we can. I mean, you've heard Ira and Tom talk about it in the earlier hour of the show. There has been instances where Florida State has not handled things so well. There's been other times where the Desirs and their agents have not handled things so well. So it's kind of a back and forth here. Matt and I do know of at least one recruitment that is being affected by this right now. But the longer that goes, I mean, you're losing time on the trail, Matt. You need to start bringing in some interior guys.
I think they'll know quickly after the dead period, right? Like it's just the way it seems like this was trending. Like because if their name shows up in the portal and take a visit, it's done, right? Isn't that what Tom has been saying all along? So you should know very quickly by the time the dead period ends on Thursday. And defensive lineman that you look at, first off, one that officially entered today, Keona Davis, is one that I think they kicked the tires on last year. FSU did reach out to him last year before he returned to Nebraska. So obvious coaching ties there. That's one you look at that they might bring in. Obviously, Jordan Sanders, who's been on campus. You just kind of got to keep looking for him. And at that point, it's like what we're seeing with the linebackers coming in on Thursday is that it's a mad dash. It has to be a mad dash because you're going to – and, hey, there's high school kids coming on campus this weekend too. So it's a busy time.
Hey, anybody want to reclassify real quick? Just real quick while you're here, just jump up a class.
Yeah.
Like a Rashad Streets or somebody. That kid's real good. Hey, you know who entered the portal? Toby Hastrup entered the transfer portal.
I actually – has he answered my text yet? He has not answered my text yet. I don't know if he's officially in yet, but he's that that's one where he needs to stay at one school, don't you think? Just because he's so raw of a prospect and hadn't played football before, he needs to stay in one system. So I don't know if I like
that's the thing. It's like I think development is one of those things that he prioritizes. I felt like Oregon was a great spot for him to land for that reason, but I guess he's searching for a new home. Maybe he's not developing as much as Oregon thought he would, or maybe he's missing home. I don't know, but Florida State developing defensive lineman has not exactly been a mesh recently, so I don't know. I mean, I remember
we've only had this system for a year, though. If I'm going to say he needs to stay in one system, we've also only had this system for a year. So,
well, I think about it like logistically, like how good of a jack would he be? I would imagine that he plays jack just with how athletic he is.
Yeah.
So for those of you who have may have forgotten about Toby, he was a track guy that started playing football during his final year of high school. So he's extremely fast and extremely athletic and muscular.
From the Houston area, and he's also originally from London, right? That's the whole thing.
Yes, somewhere.
Yeah, it was a really cool story.
Cool story. But I mean, if you talk about violence and speed at the linebacker position, or like an edge, I would spin the wheels on him as a jack target. I absolutely would. Justin Thomas says FSU D-line will be fine. They've signed 10 in recruiting. Is that before or after DeMond Lewis? I wonder. Let's do the math real quick. More will come in the transfer portal. The Twins, I believe, will return. It's all a game of who blinks first. I feel like FSU blinked first, and it still wasn't enough.
FSU has blinked like 4 times.
Yeah, they have like situation like blinked like what's the Morse code? They've done Morse code with their eyes to communicate.
They've blinked enough.
Yeah, this is something that is interesting because when talking about how much Florida State has lost between the Desires potentially with Wynn, who I don't know if his name has officially hit the portal yet, but we're expecting it to officially hit the portal.
He's not on the roster, and to not be on the roster, that is an order that's sent down.
You do have a lot of numbers that it's just that they're true freshmen. You're kind of hoping that you strike gold again with some true freshman guys. So I kind of forget that Cam Brooks is on this roster or is going to be on this roster. Like, I feel like that is a guy that can maybe push for some playing time early. I don't know. There's a lot of guys. That
there is, but the only issue is you would rather not put freshmen in that situation at such a high level so quick. Like, I would like to have a buffer.
Yes.
And maybe that's more JUCO because they have the JUCO guy, Jalen Anderson. But like, maybe that's where you go because it's a little bit more experience at a higher level than just straight to high school. But that's the only issue with it is, yeah, the Desir twins were really good, but they also had Daryl Jackson in the middle, who was very good and very experienced and took up a lot of bodies. Yes. So, I have a hard time believing that the freshmen now could have the same level of success the Desir twins had last year as freshmen.
John Morey says, if the Twins and Win are in the portal, how come I haven't heard them making visits? Well, there's dead period. Yeah, there's a dead period right now for a coaching convention that's being held in Charlotte. You heard Ira and Tom talk about it earlier in the show. I saw something on Twitter today about every single FBS coach, and I don't know if this was a gotcha or if this was fake or this is real. I think it was reported by somebody from The Athletic, if I remember correctly. But they unanimously voted for red shirts to be expended. No, for red shirts to be expanded to 9 games instead of 4. And I thought that was really interesting considering how many times you red shirt a kid and they just end up leaving. So that would be really interesting in terms of extending that. But to answer John's question, with the Twins, it was a little bit of monkey business revolving around when they actually intended to enter their names into the portal. I've said it incorrectly on previous videos on Warchant TV. It's not a strict 48 hours. It's 2 business days. So that would have happened on Friday, probably going to enter in the coming days. And Win was on a Saturday, so he has a couple of days to go. And of course,
so it'd be today or tomorrow.
Correct. Comment from Mark Bush. He says, as much as we love Win, he had 1 tackle. I started this because I thought this was interesting, and I want to pick your brain on it here. When evaluating and asking questions on how much should we actually value this person? You take a look at the stats and you say, okay, he had 1 tackle last year. He wasn't a contributor. They wanted to preserve Juju's red shirt. But you gotta have some dudes on the part of your roster. Like, this is your highest rated signee from that class. It really, you gotta hope that Florida State is able to keep some of those guys and develop them at some point, right? Like, I feel like there's a weird gray area between evaluating, okay, he wasn't a contributor, but he was going to be potentially, right?
He was going to be a contributor as early as this next season. The only reason he wasn't one this year was because he got hurt early on. That was literally the only reason. And then I got to the point where it was late in the season, still a little banged up. Why risk it? And why risk him going in and wasting a full year of eligibility when we can hold on to him and he can still have 4 years going into next year? Obviously, it backfires when he leaves, but that's the whole logic behind that. And it's not bad logic. Like, the season had already gone sideways, and it was like, all right, and he could have played the bowl game. Like, if they beat Florida, he could have played the bowl game and that wouldn't have counted. Right. And I assume that would have happened. Right. So, because he was one that they were hyping up in fall camp. Like, they were very excited about him, and he was one on all of our lists on all over the beat that he would be a contributor. And then he got hurt. That's what happened. There's no way to sugarcoat that. It's not. So yes, you could say he had 1 tackle, but sometimes the box score doesn't tell the whole story. And this is one of those. And it's also one of those where upside is a huge factor, right? It's like the NBA draft where potential is the biggest thing. He's barely played, but he still has a full 4 years left and a ton of upside because he's a highly rated prospect who was doing very good in practice via reports at Florida State. So, and that's against a very good O-line that we found out throughout the season. So it's a lot of upside potential thing. The box score doesn't tell a story there.
And that's why I push back on it a little bit. I'm not trying to pick on Mark specifically. This is a common thing that I've seen in a lot of the comment sections here in Warchant TV over the last couple of days, ever since Wynn had entered. You're going to need some people to practice against. Like, at some point, I just want to shake the camera and say, who's going to play here? Like, who's going to play here? We're running out of bodies. I know there's 10 guys coming in or 9 guys coming in that are freshmen, but at some point you do need some good players, if not to contribute, to at least practice against. I mean,
yeah. I do want to point out that this isn't the coach's fault. Like, this is all contract stuff for Wynn and the Desirs. The coaches almost have nothing to do with this. It's the contracts and the agents, and not just the people talking. And sometimes, and this is something that'll go into my story with Ryland Kennedy that's coming up, which I'll do my own version of Ira's one more thing at the end and explain that. But it's,
sorry, couldn't help myself.
That was funny how you did it earlier. And he was like, well, where's my music? And did it right away. That's bad. That's bad producing, Nick. You weren't ready. You weren't ready. You had a perfect game going and you gave up a hit, man.
No, I push back on that. It's not bad producing. I don't know when Ira's just going to go through it and just start, because it's not like there's a pause for, his theme music to hit, so I'm waiting for a pause.
Do you want him to start doing Deion Sanders and say, give me my theme music?
Yes, actually, that'd be fantastic and hilarious to see Ira Schofield be doing that. But to close my thought on Wynn there. Yeah. Hold on, let me get in about Wynn.
Yeah,
here.
You're good.
It's at some point with all of these guys that are leaving, I think practice has to matter. The quality of your scout team matters a lot here. And I think that's something that gets lost in this, is that you're running out of bodies. So every single time you say, oh, that guy wasn't a contributor, who cares? We don't want him. It's like, I remember spending 15 minutes talking to Tony when he first got here, or when we first got a chance to talk to him in March. And he talked endlessly about iron sharpening iron.
That's new.
Iron. I don't know what we have right now, Matt, but I think we have, instead of iron sharpening iron, I think we have 2 pieces of wood trying to rub up against each other and starting a massive fire. Like, at some point you need some dudes in the program. We can't just say, we can't always hit the what have you done for me lately and then just cast off these guys with high upside as not being worth our time and investment. Now, obviously, if they're going to go and play NIL negotiation games, that's one thing. You need some, I'm about to be strapping up a defensive line, Matt. I haven't played since 7th grade, I've got 4 years of eligibility left. So, I mean, I guess that's my upside, is I got 4 years of eligibility left. But,
but so also not like some agents are the problem, not all of them. It's hard to diagnose a problem with every little thing, right? Each situation is different. There are some agents who I talk to that are very good people and put client needs first over the money. Now, there's other agents that their job is specifically, I am here to get you more money. And that is true. That is their job, right? That is what a player hires an agent to do, is get them more money. And it's also lucrative to the agent for them, because they get a percentage of it. But it varies case to case. Now, in the cases of defensive line, yeah, it's a lot of agents. And so which sucks. It really sucks of how this sport has gone. Like, man, just last week when I watched the whole Calandria thing, like that was wild to watch for college football. Like that's just,
oh my word.
Yeah.
The agents, and there's been, I apologize because I can't remember his name, but there's been somebody that's been asking on the tribal council about just who these agents are and what they do. And I think it falls under 3 categories, and there's the family and friends. And again, it's worth mentioning, and some of you probably know this in the chat already, is that you don't need any certification to be an NCAA, eligible agent.
I will say it is getting better. You are seeing a lot more players with NFL level agents now that are certified in the NFLPA. That is something I've noticed a lot more of. But yeah, up until this point where it started being a normal thing to have agents, it was all, the uncles, dads, whatever, stepdad, whatever it is. And, that's part of an issue, is because you won't at that point, there's a lot of emotion in it in the negotiation when it's a family member, which changes it. When it's a true agent, they take that out of it and they do have to go do their job, right? But I do think it is getting better, but it's just such a wild, wild west of college football right now that it's hard.
So there's the family and the friends, and then there's legitimate agencies. But I think there's a third group of people that are the problem people, to call them that, so to speak. And that's the people that have started agencies, I'd say, in the last 2 to 3 to 4 years. And it's very clearly trying to capitalize on the transfer portal and the mania that it is, and trying to capitalize on that monetarily. I know people that have foregone what they were previously doing to try and become agents to cash in on that. But I've also been at plenty of those, the camps, whether it was a Rivals camp formerly, Matt, or an Under Armour camp, and you see these guys there. They're not reporters. They're not they're not scouts. They're not working for On3 or Rivals or whatever.
They could be scouts. They're scouting out who they want.
Well, they could be. Well, I can tell you what they're scouting for is they're scouting for, okay, who's the best kid at this camp right now? And can I sign him and lock him up before he even goes and finds a college?
And again, that is their job. That
is their job.
That is okay. That part of it's okay. That is their job.
But it's then it's then locking the kids up, and then the money that's to be made if the kid enters the transfer portal, that's when that becomes problematic. And that's where you get some of these more hostile negotiations.
It becomes problematic, but at the same time, again, I'm never going to blame anyone for doing their job. They are doing their job. Now, there's some that are iffy, yes, but a lot of them, it is getting better. It is getting much better. And, I'll just talk about it now with the Rylan Kennedy thing. I talked to him in his representation today and did an interview to talk about how his story, it was about relationships, and they turned down more money. And that was but this relationship was so big, and, they wanted the agent put all that aside and said, yep, you are right. This is where you need to be. And no matter what it was for personal gain or anything, that's what this guy did. And they got Rylan to the right spot and what they thought was best for him. So it's kind of a cool story, and the connection within, I said it before on live, that it's a very cool story of the connection he has with Nick Williams and the guy who got him into football, who has since passed. So it's a very, very cool story. I'm glad I got to interview with him on it. That'll be on the site in the next day or so.
All of that and more coming on warchant.com, and all of that we're going to be talking about here on Warchant TV. We've been literally preaching this promo just because of how good it is. 50% off the Ultimate Fan Bundle. You get Warchant on 3 Rivals, plus all the nitty-gritty information and updates about whether it be the Desir twins, who's coming on campus, Matt and Tom and Ira. They've been working overtime for you on warchant.com, so don't discount the discount. Take that 50% off deal if you are a new customer that's thinking about trying Warchant. Give us a try. I promise you will not be disappointed with the service. You get all the nitty-gritty details, plus a ton of great content. Of course, you can find a lot of that great content here on Warchant TV. Matt, I'm going to leave you with one question. I asked you earlier about your portal grade, and people weren't happy with the B. Do you want to amend the portal grade now that there's a couple of new commitments?
How are people not happy with it? Which way?
People just
like they thought it was too like they thought it was too low.
Generous.
I mean, you gave a C.
Generous.
Too generous. If we're just grading the additions have been good.
The offensive additions have been good. It's the defense the problem,
which I think is about to improve over the next few days. Very quickly.
I certainly hope so.
It has to, but I do think it will. They're getting the right guys on campus now. Also, hey, can you put this comment on the screen real quick? I'll do it. Did I do it right?
I got it. I got it.
Yes, he does his job. Lane Kiffin thing was his Mona Lisa. Are you kidding? Like, come on. Yes, he does his job.
I mean, okay, so that's the problem, though. Like, they've done fantastic on the offense, but if this defense is going to give up 35 points a game, we've seen how great this offense is when trailing in ball games. They might never be leading a ball game. Like, this offense has to lead ball games in order for Gus and the guys to play at the tempo that they want. So, I mean, hey, if you're just going to be behind the 8 ball all the time, I need some defensive linemen and linebackers, man. I know they're coming, but gosh.
Hey, I'm a known Tony White defender or Tony White, right? Like I've always liked Tony White.
I have too, for the record. Yeah. I think he's going to be a head coach someday, but not after this, probably.
Well, no, at the same time, he's always done more with less. That's what he's known for. That's what so let's wait and see. Like, I'm not trying to be the only positive one, but like, let's wait and see. Like, we didn't think the Desirs were going to be, if you would have told us a year from now that we would be very upset about what's going on with the Desirs right now, you would tell me I'm dead wrong, and like that could never happen. Like that will never happen, right? You would have told me that they were a last-second ad that they needed because they didn't have any edge rushers, and it was a package deal, and it was very easy because they were only committed to UCF, and it helped that their head coach came.
Yeah. No,
right? That's what you would have told me.
Well, yes, but I also would have thrown in the caveat that somebody told me before the Desirs had long even signed that they were some of the best players on the field at Norland during their playoff run. Like, they were messing dudes up. So I do agree with you. They massively exceeded expectations to the point where, it is kind of crazy that we're here a year later being like, oh my gosh, these twins are must-keep talent. But that's the amazing thing about college football. And all the madness that college football and the portal is bringing, you do find some entertaining players, some diamonds in the rough, and some surprises along the way. That about does it for Matt and myself on the Monday/Tuesday Smash. Shout out to Ira Schofel and Tom Lang for carrying us for most of the way. There's going to be visits coming on campus on Thursday, so there's still 2 more days of this dead period. Or excuse me, there's only one more Tuesday. Day. Monday Smash, Tuesday Smash. We can't even keep our brains and our days and weeks straight.
Thursday Smash. Let's always smash.
Yep. Thursdays. Now, what about a Friday Smash? Not a Friday.
That's
Smash.
my favorite.
Say goodbye, Matt Lasser. Thank you all so much for watching. This will be up on the YouTube channel later if you want to revisit anything. My name is Nick Carlisle. That's Matt Lasser for Tom Lang, for Ira Schofel, and the entire Warchant crew. Have a great rest of your Tuesday and have a great rest of your week. We don't talk to you, but of course, we most certainly will.